Welcome to Balkans Debrief. I am Ilva Tare, a resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. Following the May 8 elections in North Macedonia, a significant power shift has given the conservative center-right party, VRMO-DPMNE, led by Prime Minister Hristijan Mickoski, a strong mandate. 6 renowned Macedonian experts have crafted a strategic policy brief for the Atlantic Council, outlining some critical recommendations for the new government. As the nation stands at a crossroads with opportunities for democratic reform, fight against corruption, economic revitalization, and EU integration, it hasn't helped lately that some concerns about ethnic tensions have also resurfaced. I'm joined by 3 of the experts to discuss the country's reform agenda. Malinka, Jordanova, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Branimir, Jovanovic, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And Lura Pollozhani, welcome to Balkans Debrief.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
I will start with the easiest question for the 3 of you. If you can tell me in 1 minute 3 of the main challenges for the new government. Malinka.
Well, I would say that the first one would be to distance itself from the style of governance it had when it ran the last time. Declaratively, it has not done it until now, but the question is whether realistically it will do it. It is important how it will change or whether it will change its style of governance, abide by European standards and respect of rule of law. The second would be, I would say, to act as one government, not as a set or sum of heads of fields of different ministries and authorities. And this also has to do with the ethno-party politics, something that you already touched on. So in this way, whether to show integration on high level and to encourage integration in society at large. The third would be economic reform and growth with no significant expected inflow from EU funds.
Branimir?
I will give just one thing. I'll be more specific later on. So I would say that the main challenge they will face is to deliver on the big expectations that they're experiencing now, that they're facing now. So they won landslide, let me put it that way, and they won landslide because people wanted a change. And now they have to bring this change. People are expecting a change. And if they don't bring a change, a significant change, or at least don't even show a desire to bring a change, there will be a big dissatisfaction, big disillusionment among the people in the country, which will create a big vacuum, empty space, which no one can predict how it will evolve. No one can say what will happen with this empty space in political sense. One possibility is that the current opposition, the Social Democrats, will fill in that space, but that doesn't sound like a very reasonable, I would say, expectation at the moment, because they're in a knockdown, if I can put it that way. Another kind of maybe more realistic scenario is that the far-right opposition Levica will step in, which is kind of scary. So a third scenario, which is also not very realistic, is that there will be a new political option. But I think the most realistic scenario is that there will be actually a big disappointment, an empty space, which nobody will fill in. So we'll probably the country will slide towards a Bulgaria scenario where you might have like many elections, one after another, nobody winning the elections clearly, in a way a political deadlock that no one can actually benefit from. So yes, that will be my general answer to this question. I will give more details on my field economics later on.
Okay, so most likely to happen is a scenario, the one with the elections, as you said, the Bulgarian scenario, but hopefully it's less desirable for the country's interest. Lura, what are your three or more main challenges for the country?
Well, I stick to 3. So I would say 3 kind of pillars should stand with this government. And I stand very much in what Malinka was saying in terms of changing course and also based on VRMO's past experience of governing. So here I would choose 3 words. 1, inclusive. 2, more open and transparent in the sense of non-retaliatory, which is something we are already beginning to see, which it has been kind of masked in the image of transparency, but it's anything but. and then policies that are citizen-oriented. I think, as Branimir was saying, there's a lot of tiredness in the country among citizens, a lot of frustration. There's been a lot of talk about bilateral issues and not about domestic issues. So citizens feel a bit left out, so much so that they voted for perhaps a party that they would not have voted otherwise, just to have this change. So focusing on the needs that citizens have and orienting policies towards these needs is what this government needs to do. And so far, we haven't seen any of that either. So I would like to see a little bit more of that. And in terms of inclusive, this speaks to both the idea of the inter-ethnic inclusivity, but also opening up the space, because this is a political party that is known to be quite exclusionary. So changing the narrative, but also changing the policies where we all feel like citizens, I think will be key and will really show that this government is going to be different.
Thank you, Lura. Branimir, I'll start with you. You covered in the report, in the policy brief, you covered the economy, which is quite important for the citizens that also Lura mentioned. And I guess all of you care what they really want now, which are better conditions in their country. What strategies does the new government have in place right now to address the fiscal deficit, given the strain from previous government spending?
And I think they don't have a strategy, so they are kind of lost. That's my impression. I say this based on several observations. So the first one is that if you look at the fiscal situation, what they did in the fiscal sphere, so they were announcing a loan from Hungary of 1 billion euros for several months. In the end, they took a loan of 500 million euros. So, I mean, of course, it's better to take a smaller loan than a bigger loan. But when you're talking for several months that you'll take a loan of 1 billion, and in the end, it turns out to be half of that size, that tells you that you are not serious, you don't know what you're doing. Then if you look at the budget that they prepared, this first supplementary budget, of course, it cannot reflect their policies, but it reflects their stance, it reflects their behavior. So the first supplementary budget that they prepared was bigger than the previous budget of around 300, let me simplify, like 3% of GDP bigger than the previous budget. So basically they come to power, and the first thing they're doing is they're increasing public spending without actually people knowing what we are spending on. So there's no any substantial, significant policy reform. There's no like big hospital, big highway that is being built. Nothing really like that. But we're just seeing that the budget is getting bigger. The fiscal deficit, they also increased it by 1.5 percentage point of GDP, which is a significant increase for such a short period of time. Public debt, they announced that it will rise by 8 percentage points of GDP in just half a year. So when they came to power, second quarter of this year, public debt is 60% of GDP. They said by the end of this year, it will reach 68% of GDP. So these are their numbers. I'm not making them up. So they are saying that they will increase the public debt by 8 percentage points of GDP in less than a year, in half a year. That's crazy. That's insane, especially in a situation when you don't have a terrible crisis, when you don't have any policy, significant policy that you're doing. So my impression is that they don't really know what to do. Yeah, and another thing that they announced they will cut taxes on big companies. Like they will halve the corporate income tax for big companies in order to attract them in the country. First, that's wrong on social justice grounds or whatever. So all the world is trying to tax big companies more. Now we are saying, come on, you big guys, big companies, we will tax you less. So it's wrong on those moral grounds. But second, it also shows that the government doesn't know what to do, because that's actually forbidden. That's not possible to do anymore. Because starting from this year, there is this global minimum tax, which refers to the whole world. So no country anymore will be able to reduce their corporate income tax below 15%. And they're saying we will make it 5%. It will be impossible to do it from this year, because if you do it, then other countries will be able to tax the companies by the rate of 15%. I don't want to go too much into detail because it's a technical discussion, but they said that they will reduce the corporate income tax to 5%, which is actually impossible to do. So that tells you that it's not just that they're wrong on, let's say, stand wrong on the political compass, if you want left or right, but they are also incompetent. So yeah, my overall conclusion will be that they're kind of lost in the fiscal situation. They don't know what to do, and that's actually a bit scary, I would say. I would use the word again.
Branimir, they're saying the campaign finished and they won the election. So is there any action already taken?
Yeah, so the action is that they took a loan of 500 million from Hungary, a loan which they don't know basically what they will spend on. So they said half of this money will go for supporting companies, but the country already has such loans for supporting companies from the European Investment Bank, from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So they are taking a loan for purposes which can already be financed by other sources. Another half will go for, they say, for local projects like, I don't know, hospitals, roads, whatever, schools in towns, but these projects are non-existent. So these projects do not exist at the moment. So if you ask the municipalities, do you have a project to be financed? They will tell you, no, I don't have. So basically it tells you that the whole story is the reverse. So they don't start with the need. They don't say like, this country needs this and we will finance that, we'll get the money, but they start with the money. So they had to take a loan, or they agreed already a loan from Hungary, and now they need to spend the money. So that's the thing that they do. And let me also mention that taking a loan from Hungary in this situation is actually very problematic for the country from political point of view, because you're getting close to the black sheep in Europe in a situation when you already have trouble relations, problematic relations with the EU, with your neighbors and everything. So kind of you're isolating yourself more and more. So yes, that's the thing that they did so far in the fiscal sphere. And the other thing which they did is they increased the budget already by, like I said, 3% of GDP, which is actually a substantial increase for short period of time. So yes, the actions that they did are actually, you can see it's not just words, it's actually deeds. And the things which they did so far are not really promising and certainly not optimistic.
Branimir, has there been any debate in the country by experts or by politicians on the Hungarians' loan about the interest, the transparency, as you mentioned, the potential political impact too?
Very little, unfortunately, very little. And that's actually one of the problems that I see in the country at the moment, which actually I don't like, that people are accepting whatever the government is doing. And the media especially, I think I'm very critical towards the media lately, because my impression is that they are letting the government do whatever they want. I don't know what's the reason. I don't live there at the moment, so I don't have the right to say. But my observation from here in Vienna is that everybody is letting the government do whatever they want to. I was in Skopje like until last week, and I spoke with people and everything. So most of the people will tell you like, we are waiting, we are giving the government a bit of time, but I'm not sure how long this time will be. But yes, concretely about the Hungarian loan, yeah, people were writing, media were writing about it, but there was no substantial debate on the pros and cons of that loan. And what's also very worrying is that the government didn't answer to all these questions. So many questions were raised in this public debate, like journalists, economists, they were asking questions. So why are you taking these loans? Are there some hidden agreements there? There are talks that in addition to this loan, we will have like Hungarian investment in the telecommunications, many questions. But the government is ignoring these questions and is not answering. So that's also a bit problematic. And it's kind of coming, if I can come back to the story that Malinka said in the beginning, and also Lura kind of mentioned, that was a behavior typical of the previous VRMO government in Gruevski time, like this non-transparency and lack of accountability. So we are already, at least I'm already seeing that from this government, that they kind of don't want to answer questions to the public about the things they're doing.
Malinka, how is North Macedonia navigating the pressures from bilateral agreements and disagreements with Greece and Bulgaria while maintaining the EU integration goals?
It has been a rough navigation at the beginning of this government. It has, in a way, tested its limit at the beginning of the mandate with very mixed results. The challenge is to maintain the EU path, to respect EU standards while attempting to induce some equality, at least some equality in the implementation of the agreements with Bulgaria and Greece. Because we very often mix the agreements themselves and their interpretation. And the interpretation is very much on the side of the stronger side. And in this case, these are Greece and Bulgaria. So the government is really here in a quite difficult position from over-implementation from Macedonian side and quite a lack of implementation on the side of Bulgaria and Greece. to build on further the bilateral relations, which have been imposed as a condition for EU integration. So the agreements are asymmetric. The implementation is asymmetric. Now the duty for the government is to try to correct this while approaching the EU and international partners and developing dialogue. This really needs capacity, skills, and credibility. So if you are not credible, you cannot simply do this. It's very, very difficult. At the same time, the problem is that none of the agreements has brought benefits to Macedonian citizens that they expected. And they expected EU accession. What they got was more and more blackmail.
They got the NATO membership, meanwhile.
They got NATO membership, that didn't get EU membership, which was also promised and which was also expected. So, and besides that, what we get is new conditions and ultimatums, which is also changing totally the public discourse in Macedonia. So it's not likely that the constitutional amendments will be adopted soon. The government, this would be political suicide for the government, for VRMO as the leading party of the government. The best scenario would be, as I said, to build upon credibility, and to approach with capacity and maturity the EU partners, also being very cautious about partnership in this political scene, as Branimir already touched on, as it is in the European Union. The situation is not very promising, and hopefully it will not become more complex. But at least we are seeing less burden in the public scene in Macedonia, in the public discourse. These bilateral issues have, at least somehow, they are still in the forefront, but are not the first issues of public interaction.
Malinka, let me follow up with you on this issue. So on one hand, you're saying that constitutional changes are unlikely to happen. On the other hand, the frustration of citizens for not getting what they were promised on the EU membership is still high. Where's the country heading?
Well, the problem is that the citizens want EU membership, but not at this price, and that they're aware that the EU prospects are fading. So they're very much disappointed with the promises that the EU has made. So where the country is heading, on one side, I think that the international partners and international media simplify the issue, just saying constitutional changes and everything else will be solved. No, this is absolutely not the issue. Other issues are behind the scenes. So it is not constitutional changes, and Macedonia will be tomorrow in the EU. No, that's not the issue. So it's much more complicated, and it also bears that the international partners like EU and the US also have responsibility because they have leverage both on Macedonia and on Bulgaria and Greece.
And we have to wait and see how that will play out. Lura, I saw in the report an impressive number of civil society organizations in North Macedonia. If I'm not mistaken, around 15,000 registered, which should have contributed to a thriving civil society contribution and debates and expertise. Is this the case?
Well, yes and no. In the sense that, of course, while there are 15,000 organizations, not all of them are active. Some of them are perhaps quite small foundations. But the thing is that the pot of resources and support that is available to organizations is quite limited. So as a result, we have either organizations that are based in Skopje that can get to most of the funding, or also some organizations at the local level, but this is, again, quite limited. I think there's been significant shifts in North Macedonia in the sense that we had in 2016, 2015, 2016, large protests protesting exactly the government that is now in power. And these protests really served as kind of a hopeful return of civil society, because as one of the authors of the report on youth has mentioned, Sara Milenkovska, this government doesn't necessarily have the best track record when it comes to CSOs. So in 2016, we already have kind of our empowerment, let's say, of CSOs. But then we had, and Malinka was quite good at outlining the frustration with the EU integration process and the reform process. A lot of civil societies are kind of drawing back, or perhaps are even burnt out and very tired of constantly having to work for the values of democracy. And the yes part of this is that I think civil society organizations in North Macedonia and more broadly in the Balkans are very well placed to be champions of democracy. I think they're very important in the post-conflict, post-Yugoslav kind of context that we have. They were crucial to establishing the institutions, and they're still crucial to maintaining these institutional cultures that are important for democracy to thrive. And I think here, civil society organizations, perhaps not 15,000 of them, but quite a few do, I think, a very good job at kind of keeping governments up to check.
Lura, are there any surveys or statistics on the trust that the public has on the civil society in Skopje?
Yes, and this trust is not very admirable. It's not very high. And again, here I would call back to context in the sense that one, and we've spoken very often with Branimir about this, there is a critique of civil societies also being a little bit detached, considering that a lot of them are based in Skopje and are part of, let's say, of the Skopje bubble. But then there's also, I think, something to be considered, and that is also the very strong anti-CSO campaigns that, again, this government used to lead when they were in power last time. We had a big anti-Soros campaign in the country. We had civil society activists who were targeted. And while there were changes, it doesn't mean that these narratives ever went away. So I think civil society still, it does enjoy trust, but it's not significant. I don't know the latest polls, but it doesn't figure in the top.
I get the picture.
Yeah.
We're towards the end of our conversation, but I wanted to bring up the issue that I mentioned also in my introduction. We know that Albanians make up for roughly 1/4 of the country's population, with that has over 1.8 million, and the recent narratives have been inflammatory. Is there any danger, any risk of potential destabilization on the ethnic relations? I don't know. The question goes to the three of you. Malinka, if you want to start first.
There is always this risk. So this is nothing new. The resurfacing of ethnic narratives always comes at times of elections. Always. And now it's a post-election time and disappointment on Baidui, who's been in power for 20 years, that they're not in power any longer. So they're trying to bring the issue of legitimacy and so on, which is nowhere in the Ohrid Agreement. So basically, the government is approaching this in the same way all the government have done until now, and this is power sharing among elites. And this is until now the most prominent way of implementation of the Ohrid Agreement, combined with the ethnopolitics and the rule of law record. You can imagine what this leads to. So basically, what now we have, if the government, VRMO with another partner from the Albanian bloc, power sharing again, and which is the potential for destabilization. It depends very much on how much the two partners in government will articulate the interest, but it also, to a certain extent, depends on international partners. And here, I mean, U.S., knowing the history and the way that Dewey has relied on U.S. support and advice until now. But anyway, I would, if we come to the issue, I would very much stand for a very objective assessment of the implementation of the Ohrid Agreement and evaluation, which we have not had until now. And this doesn't mean a political debate, who is stronger, who has more legitimacy, who has given more and received less, but about an inclusive dialogue. I'm not sure that is possible. I just referred to what Lura said. I hope it would be possible. And I hope that this government a pressure could be made on it to at least start a dialogue with the society and within society about societal integration and not only power sharing.
Lura, the State Department, the spokesperson, said a few days ago that they are keeping a close eye and keeping in close contact with the government and their partners in North Macedonia. Do you see any issue in the next months, any potential destabilization?
Well, it depends how we define destabilization, but I do think there is already a sense of destabilization, because if you look at the news, there's every day these micro destabilizations, which have a lot of potential, I think, for something even more dangerous, and that is complete apathy. And I think that's when governments who want to do things, not so nice things, then are very happy because you have apathetic citizens. I think one thing that we cannot ignore is the fact that we have a big installation of ethno-nationalist rhetoric from all sides, sadly. And I would say that this particularly, I think, affects youth, and it risks mobilizing a younger generation of future political leaders, but also participants in the political process, to be basically infused with these ethno-nationalist ideas, which we were hoping to get rid of. If you open TikTok nowadays, you will see a lot of nationalist rhetoric along all of the reels I see, which shows that this is something that young people are choosing to vent their frustrations. And if political parties take this over and use this as a mobilization technique, I think it holds great dangers. And it might not be destabilization in the way that we see it in these big stories, but destabilization in terms of the health of our democracy.
And Branimir, what do you think about this?
Well, I think I'm slightly more optimistic or less pessimistic than Lura and Malinka. I mean, there's an old saying in the region: if they don't have what to eat, give them ethnic tensions. So I think we are seeing that right now in North Macedonia. I mean, it's an old story, of course. People have been doing it in the region forever, at least in the last 30 years. I think that's the thing that we are seeing right now in the country. Basically, the new government doesn't know what to do. They are kind of lost. They are overwhelmed. They didn't expect themselves to win so much, and now they don't know what to do with power. And because of that, they are defocusing. They are trying to defocus with these stories of, but there are tensions and destabilization and everything, because people want something and they cannot give people what they want. So because of that, they're trying to destabilize. So it's an old story of playing with fire. Of course, playing with fire can always kind of get out of control. It has happened before in the region. It has happened before in the country. But still, I'm not that pessimistic. I think this will be just the remaining part of the folklore, if I can put it that way. But I think that worries me is that this is a sign that the government doesn't know what to do. And especially in the economic social sphere, which is the thing which people really want, where people want to see a change. And this is the thing that worries me, that the government will not take any measures in the areas which are important to people. And instead, they will defocus with these ethnic tensions, nationalistic stories, and whatever. And because of that, I think I will come back to the stories that we saw before. First of all, this government will be similar to the previous government of VRMO, and also will see a rise in apathy among people and kind of a situation, a limbo in a way, where nobody actually supports or believes in anything.
Thank you, Branimir. Thank you, Malinka. And thank you so much, Lura, for your expertise in the policy brief and the recommendations that you have made. Hopefully your voice will be heard, and I'm very happy we had this conversation together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.